reading for the day comes from the 11th chapter of Matthew. It is prompted in part by a visit to Jesus from some disciples of John the Baptist. John is in prison at this time, but he has heard about all the things that are going on with Jesus, and so he has sent some of his followers to ask Jesus if he is indeed the Messiah they have been waiting for. And after they have left, Jesus has spoken at length about John, about how great he was and how he was indeed Elijah, the one that many Jews thought was to return and foretell the coming of the Messiah. But following that, he changes his tone rather dramatically as we pick up with his words here. Listen for what the Spirit is saying to us this day. But to what will I compare this generation? It is like children sitting in the marketplace and calling to one another. We played the flute for you, and you did not dance. We wailed, and you did not mourn. For John came neither eating nor drinking, and they say he has a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they say, look, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Yet wisdom is vindicated by her deeds. Then we skip over a section in which Jesus pronounces woes on some of the cities of Israel where he has been. And then he continues saying, I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and the intelligent, and have revealed them to infants. Yes, Father, for such is your gracious will. All things have been handed over to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. I've seen a number of newspaper articles lately talking about how the struggling economy that we have is not creating many good jobs. Jobs that would sustain the middle class, that are the sort of jobs that have earned America the nickname land of opportunity. And that got me to wondering, just what is it that makes a job a good job? What sort of attributes would it have to have? I mean, what do you think? What are some things that a job has to have to say it's good? Yeah? Okay. What are some? I mean, what does the job have to have? Money. Yeah. There's a lot of things that a good job has to have. Certainly, money is one of them. I mean, there are some minimum that is required to live, to make ends meet, to support a family. So money is important. It's very important to some of us. But on the other hand, I've had a couple of jobs in my life that I'm not sure that any amount of money would have kept me doing them for very long. And so I don't guess a good job is just about money. The status of some jobs is really important to people. There was a Dear Abby letter the other day where some parents were asking how to handle the disparaging remarks of friends that they made about their daughter who was finishing up her master's in social work. I'm guessing that in this couple's circle of friends, one does not aspire to become a social worker. And that reminded me that when I was in high school, I got really into horses. And I became convinced that I was going to have a career as a farrier. Now, for those of you who have no idea what a farrier is, farriers shoe horses. Now, I think my parents were quite happy when I changed my mind. Not only it was, they expected me to go to college, not to trade school, and also my change of heart, I suppose, relieved them of having to deal with that question. So, what's your son doing these days? From its very beginnings, our Presbyterian tradition has also had something that it wants to say about what makes a good job. It says that each of us has a vocation. Now, vocation is not synonymous with occupation. Vocation means a calling. Our theology says we all have a calling. I know a lot of people think of pastors and teachers and nurses and so forth as having callings. But we say, no, all people have callings. Now, not all of them come with salaries. To be a parent is a calling. And there certainly are people who end up in jobs that are not really their calling. But still, we insist that God has a calling, callings perhaps, for each and every one of us. Come to me, all you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Now, Jesus is not talking about work here, at least not just about work. The yoke and the burdens he is referring to are the rules, the expectations, the faith, the religiousness that is supposed to shape all of life, including work. And so I suppose we might expand my original question from what makes a job a good job to what makes a life a good life. Now, of course, Jesus is not speaking these words about coming to him in isolation. They are prompted by that visit from John the Baptist's disciples, who have been sent by John, who from prison has heard what Jesus is doing, and he sends these followers to find out if Jesus is indeed the one, the Messiah. And after these disciples of John have departed, Jesus extols John to the crowd, but then he seems to grow frustrated. But with what will I compare this generation? They are like children in the marketplaces, calling to one another. We played the flute for you, but you would not dance. We wailed, but you would not mourn. Jesus is referring to children playing games. At first, they play a wedding game, a celebration, a happy celebration, but their playmates will not join in the festivities. And then the children play a funeral game, mimicking the professional mourners that were hired in ancient funerals. But their friends will not join in the dirge. Jesus blasts his contemporaries who heard John the Baptist call to repentance and to strict adherence to God's law, but rejected it as too severe, too harsh and difficult. And yet these same people saw Jesus dining with tax collectors and sinners, welcoming lowlife into the kingdom. And they were appalled that Jesus would even have anything to do with folks such as this. Jesus is speaking to his generation, the religious people of his day, But the descendants of that generation are still very much alive. We still find both Jesus and John offensive in their own way. The pastor or church leader who dares to sound like John the Baptist will soon find herself out of a job. And likewise, the pastor who begins to fill the pews with prostitutes and ex-cons and addicts will likely suffer the same fate. We expect that religion will make us feel better without asking too much of us. But we also expect that religion will uphold conventional notions of propriety and morality. No funeral dirges, but not too much dancing either. Now, the people of Jesus' age were a lot more religious than we are. That is, unlike us, they did not separate out certain portions of life, work, government, and so on, from the religious sphere. For them, all things were religious things. But for all their religiousness, both John and Jesus were problematic for them, as it seems they still are for us. Now these words religion and religious are loaded words. They are words with a lot of meaning, a lot of connotation, and a lot of baggage. On the one hand, religion and religious can speak of that innate human desire and longing that each of us seem to have to draw near, to connect to the divine. But religion and religious can also speak of those systems we devise to get God's seal of approval on those things that we like. This religion features athletes praying for their team to win. It is an easy alliance between faith and flag as congregations wax patriotic in the midst of worship to God. It is being good and respectable and imagining that somehow God likes us more because of that. Our innate religious desire to know God can open us to the presence of God in Jesus. But our religious systems that we devise and manage are often offended by the genuine presence of God, whether it is thundered by John or whether it is mediated by the amazing grace of Jesus. And somehow that brings me back around to those questions about what makes for a good job or for a good life, which I think are profoundly religious questions. Come to me, all you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. I think Jesus helps to answer the questions about a good job and a good life here, but it is easy to misunderstand him. Our culture's understanding of the word easy, I think, focuses too much on ease, on no effort, on doing nothing, expending no energy. We sometimes forget those other definitions of easy: pleasant, relaxed, in a non-hurried pace. We can speak of easy on the eye, easy to wear, an easy read, none of which imply no effort at all. And to be honest, the Bible translators might have been more help to us here as well. The word they translate easy more generally means suitable, useful, worthy, or good. To my mind, a work that is suitable and good sounds a little like a calling, a vocation. Jesus is not calling us here to a lazy boy faith with our feet kicked up and our hands on the remote. Jesus is instead inviting us to follow Him, and in so doing to discover the work and the life that truly suits us, that we are called to, that is our vocation. Unfortunately, very often conventional religion does not do the best job of drawing us in to this life Jesus desires for us. The church too often has traded discipleship for belief and for membership. We have made faith more about doctrines and creeds and heaven than about actually following Jesus. Come to me, all you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke suits you. It is just right for you. And my burden is light. Take Jesus' yoke on and learn from Him. Think about the work Jesus did and the life that He lived. It certainly was not easy in the sense that we usually use that word, but it certainly was exactly who He was supposed to be. He lived a life that was perfectly fit for Him, that fit Him to a T. What is the work and the life that you are meant for, that fits you to a T? Jesus says that you learn it from Him, from what He teaches, and from the example of His life. Most of us know someone who has a miserable job, a job they can't stand, and perhaps a miserable life as well. Such folks generally do the minimum at that miserable job. They arrive as late as possible, do as little as possible, and leave as early as possible. But I have seen those very same people go on a mission trip and suddenly throw themselves into their work, working long hours under arduous conditions and terrible weather, and somehow not seeming to be the least bit exhausted by all of that effort. Perhaps they have discovered just what Jesus means by an easy yoke. Who are you supposed to be? What are you supposed to do? What is the work and the life that really suits you, that you are meant for, that fits you to a T? If you're wondering about that at all, Jesus has some interesting thoughts on the subject. All praise and glory to the God who comes to us in Jesus to show us the shape of true human life. Thanks be to God.